Hi, this is Michael Buffer, and welcome to the BoxHard podcast.
Hello, everyone. This is Mikey Garcia.
Yo, it's your boy, the odd guy himself, Malik King Scott.
Hi, I'm Charlie Edwards.
This is Fast Eddie Chambers, and you're listening to the BoxHard podcast with my main man, Joey Coastman.
Hello everybody and welcome to episode 97 of the BoxHard podcast. It's again the usual suspects. I'm here with my panel member slash co-host slash co-founder, all the rest, Mr. Ayaz Sumra. Ayaz, how you doing?
I'm good, Joey. How are you?
Very good, my friend. Very good. Now this show is another edition of the American August. I think we're going to call the last few shows the American August, because last August, you know, there wasn't too many fights on. We didn't know what to do. We were scratching our heads a little bit. We brought in like a world champion every single show. And this month of August, without even realising it, I've been looking and we've spoke to like Americans every week. So this episode will have another 2 Americans on it. Last week's one had 2 Americans on it. The week before that, I think we had 2 Americans on it. So it seems like we're just doing an American August. There's nothing wrong with that. It is what it is. That's the theme this month. However, August hasn't been fight-free. There has been quite a few fights going on. We're going to start the show with the review part of the show, where, again, we review the action last week. We give our thoughts on what went down in the boxing rings around the world from last week. Then we're going to bring in guest number 1, a man that is in a seriously good position. He's going to be fighting for a world title very soon, and he gets his chance to become the youngest super-middleweight world champion in history. So we'll be speaking to that man after the review part. And then when we come back in part 2, we're going to be talking about the latest news. There's a couple bits of news to go over, and then we're also going to give, it's not really a pound for pound list, but we're going to basically, me and Ayaz are going to discuss who the number 1 man is in each division, from heavyweight all the way down to, I don't know, probably flyweight or something like that. As the weights go lower and lower, the knowledge goes a little bit thinner and thinner for those really low weights. So probably from about heavyweight down to flyweight, we're going to basically give our opinion on who the number 1 man is at those weights and the reason behind them being the number 1. So that should be pretty interesting. That should be pretty fun. Before we go on, I just want to also give a couple of shout outs to our regular listeners. I want to give a shout out to Danny Biggs. I want to give a shout out to Ricey, who's could even be on an aeroplane right now going over to the Falklands. He's going away for 6 months. He's an avid listener of the BoxHard podcast, and he assures me that he's going to be listening to every week's show. So all the very best to you, pal. Thank you once again. And I'm also going to give a shout out to Valley Legend as well, another great listener of this podcast. So thank you very much to all those guys there. Let's get on with the show. We're going to start with the review part. As I said, we're going to visit a fight from last week at the Prenton Park, which is, I think, the Tranmere Rovers FC ground, or something to do with that football club, over in Birkenhead, Merseyside, United Kingdom. One fight to mention on this bill: Sean Masher Dodd, 13-2 with 1 draw, took on journeyman Antonio Horvatic. This was Antonio Horvatic's 50th pro fight, and unfortunately for him, he got another loss. So his record, 10 wins and 40 losses now. Sean Dodd decided to have this little kind of keep busy / warm up kind of fight before he takes on Tom Stalker on September 30th. So good idea, I suppose, you know, for him to get out once again before that fight. Sean Dodd now 14-2 with 1 draw. I'm actually looking really forward to that fight with Tom Stalker. Horvatic was given a standing count in the second round, and he was down 3 times in that third round, where ultimately he was TKO'd. So a good win there for Sean Dodd. Moving over now to the Pinnacle Bank Arena, where all the action really happened, over in Lincoln, Nebraska, USA. We're going to start with the undercard. Mike Alvarado, 37-4, took on Sydney Sequeira, 26-12. I haven't seen the fight, but I saw the finish. Mike Alvarado picked up a humongous knockout in round 4. It was scheduled for 8, and he looked pretty good doing it. So Mike Mile High Alvarado now 38-4. Sydney Sequeira, we knew that he was overmatched a little bit, but we weren't too sure, and we never quite are too sure which Mike Alvarado is going to turn up come fight night. He gets up to all sorts of things outside the ring, unfortunately, but a good win for him. That's good to see. Also on that bill, Shakur Stevenson, the young prospect, being managed and guided by Andre Ward. He moved to 3-0 with a unanimous decision win over 6 rounds against David Michel Paz, who had a winning record of 4-3. It's now been levelled out. It's 4-4. He's got 1 draw as well. Shakur Stevenson pretty much won every round. A little bit amateur-y, I suppose you could say. He kind of throws a lot of shots, doesn't really load up too much. I don't want to be overcritical because I think he's a tremendous fighter. He's still only 3 fights into his pro career, so we've got to be patient with him. But no, phenomenal young fighter. Also on the bill, Bryant Jennings. I was happy to see him pick up win number 20. He was on the show a few weeks back. He had his opponent down, Daniel Marks. He had him down 3 times in round 2, where he ultimately won the fight by TKO in that second round. So all the very best there to Bryant Jennings, 20-2 now, and Daniel Marks 15-5 with 1 draw. Dillian Whyte's fight. Now this one was shown on the Sky telecast as well. It wasn't shown live. We saw like a replay of it, I suppose. All 3 rounds. It was a bit wild. It was a bit strange. Malcolm Tan, we obviously said on last week's show, he's only had 3 fights in the last 10 years. This was his 4th fight in 10 years. Malcolm Tan was down twice in the second round. Now, when he went down, both times, especially the first time, he waited till the referee basically said 10, and he got up, or he got up about 9 3/4, something like that. And as soon as he rise to his feet, the referee said 10. Do you want to continue? And he kind of sort of motioned like he did, but his body language wasn't really kind of agreeing with his shaking of the head or his muttering of the words. And his corner man actually come up, on the canvas with, like ready to take out his gum shield or whatever, like the fight was over. And he decided to, I don't know, it was a bit messy, and then he kind of went back to his corner but then kind of carried on. It was just weird. And then he gets knocked down again, probably about 20 or 30 seconds after that. Dillian Whyte was really, kind of like winging him with those body shots as well. And he had him down for the second time in that round. And again, he did the exact same thing. He got up at about 9.5, and the referee, gave him a chance to carry on once again. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Dillian Whyte hit him with a punch that he was a bit annoyed about, and all of a sudden he kind of woke up and wanted to continue, and he looked okay for the closing of that round 2. If I'm not mistaken, I can't really remember too vividly now. It was a bit of a joke, really. And then when he came out in round 3, he got stopped properly by Dillian Whyte. So Dillian Whyte did what he had to do. Again, I'm not quite sure why the whole fight even happened. It wasn't like a great win. We know as proper boxing fans that Malcolm Tan never really had anything to offer, and Dillian Whyte didn't really fight in front of hardly any people. If you actually see, there was hardly anyone in the seats around the arena. So I'm not quite sure what that was all about. But he gets a win on the road. It's been a long time since he's done that. So I'm pleased for Dillian Whyte now, 21-1. Malcolm Tan at 24-6. Also on that bill, the fight that opened up the card on Sky, which was the first live bout. 22-0 Mike Reed, he's been on the show before. He took on Robert Frankel, 35-17 with 1 draw. Mike Reed, I like the guy and all that, but it was a little bit boring, that fight for me. I feel like it dragged. It went the full distance, 10 rounds. Mike Reed won unanimously. I think, if I'm not mistaken, he actually shut the guy out. So, that's a good win, I suppose, but doesn't really possess the firepower, didn't really take too many risks. And, I can't we're not the ones in there, taking the punches, and I understand the whole game, why put it all on the line for the fans? I got to think about myself kind of angle. I understand that and I respect that, but he kind of just didn't really step up the gear at all. He just fought at one pace, and he just cruised really. So not overly impressive, but again, another win. That's all that matters. His record now 23-0. Mike Reed and Robert Frankel 35-18 now with one draw. Also on that bill, Alexander Gvozdyk. Everybody was quite high on him before the fight, but some people were saying that he wasn't very impressive. I thought he did quite well, in my honest opinion. He retained his NABF light heavyweight title and also the WBO NABO light heavyweight title. His opponent Craig Baker, the American, was 17-1, his record going in. He was down once in round 6 where it was stopped. It was a TKO in round 6 for Gvozdyk, and maybe he didn't perform all that well, but he still pretty much won every round. I think that Craig Baker had a good jab when he got going. The thing what kind of struck me and kind of surprised me a bit was Craig Baker came straight out centre ring in that first round. He seemed very, very confident, and his belief kind of got him through a few of those rounds where I think that Gvozdyk started a bit slow, but eventually, he caught up with him and stopped him like he does pretty much all of his opponents. And now the main event. Let's talk about this one, Ayaz. I know that you tuned in for this. The undercard wasn't all that great, but the main event, Terence Crawford 31-0 took on Julius Indongo 22-0. Obviously, we all know all 4 belts were on the line for this. It was a double unification, if you like. Both men had 2 belts each, the IBF and WBA super belt with Julius Indongo, and of course the WBC and WBO belts with Terence Crawford. Going into the fight, you said on last week's show, Ayaz, that you thought that Crawford would win on points. I didn't actually give a prediction, but I thought that he was going to probably win on points as well. I think he would have done really well to stop Indongo. We were both wrong. He managed to stop him, and not only stop him, over the course of a hard fight. Everything went Crawford's way, and he stopped him very early. What was your thoughts about that? A really impressive win from Crawford there for me.
Definitely, I can tell you that for a fact. Really, really impressive win by Terence Crawford. As I said last week in the show, I thought this fight was going to go to points. In the first round, you can see Indongo going wild, but Crawford was, as usual, boxing him. In the second round, Indongo was going for wild punches, and Crawford dropped him in the second round. Now, in the third round, Crawford hit him with a body shot which hurt Indongo and knocked him out. In my opinion, right, now he's the unified division. He's won the title. In my opinion, now I think it's time for him to go up to 147 and fight the winner, Jeff versus Manny Pacquiao. That'd be a very good fight for him.
Yeah, we're not quite sure if that rematch is going to be coming off. I've heard all sorts of rumours about the Manny Pacquiao Jeff Horn thing, but back to the Crawford Indongo fight there. Obviously, we thought that he was going to go to points because Crawford, even though he stopped many people, I don't really have him down as like a one-punch kind of knockout artist. He's like, he knocks people out with accumulative punches. Also, we're looking at Indongo's record. It's not filled with many names, but he's been in there with a couple guys. He's done well. He doesn't seem to really tire over the stretch. He hasn't shown any vulnerabilities from what we'd seen, and I was startled by the fact that Crawford was able to solve the Indongo puzzle so quickly. Again, I want to give big credit to Crawford's training team and Crawford himself, obviously. Last week we had Jamel Herring on the show. He was talking a little bit to me about the, being in camp with Crawford and all the rest of that. But no, Indongo, as you said, he was down in round 2, and that finish in round 3 was absolutely devastating. I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, a left, like a kind of left hook to the body, but right. It wasn't like I wouldn't say it was a hook, so to speak, because it wasn't really around the side. It was kind of straight down the middle, right kind of on his belly button, caught him like on that kind of right on the belt line kind of thing, in the sweet spot, if you like. And it's a soft area, and he wasn't expecting the punch to come, and he caught him properly with it, and it was just one of those punches you just know that was it. He just couldn't get up from that. But in Indongo's, in his defence, I will say that he did not fight with the right game plan. But I'd also say I don't really know what the right game plan is to beat Crawford. He looks that special at the moment, and as we touched on as well, he becomes a unified champion. We haven't seen many of those over the years in boxing. It's been a long time. Bernard Hopkins, the last person to properly unify and own all the belts, all the proper recognised top belts at once, and Terence Crawford does that here. It's a bit of a shame that the IBF are already trying to force a mandatory upon him, and he's only been the IBF champion for like 5 days. So, that's a bit of a shame. We're not quite sure if his future even lies at 140. He may move up to 147. I'd like to see the fight you mentioned as well, and many others. I'd like to see him against Errol Spence. That really gets my my mouth watering. That's a brilliant fight down the line. That's it for Nebraska. Moving over now to a fight card that happened earlier this week. It took place on Tuesday at the Sam's Town Hotel in Las Vegas, Nevada, USA, of course. And the promoter of this bill was Floyd Money Mayweather. Now, he wasn't in attendance as far as I know, but someone that was in attendance was Iron Mike Tyson. He was there. He was sitting there in the venue. There was a few fights to mention on the bill. I'm going to start with Jamel Herring, friend of the show, of course. I guess it was on last week's show. Again, he's just come out of the camp with Terence Crawford. Jamel Herring 16-1 going in against Floyd Mayweather's fighter Ladarius Miller 13-1. Now Jamel Herring, we all know he's fought at the higher level than Miller has, and this was Miller's real, kind of first proper step up, first proper fight. No one can really argue with that, but Jamel Herring unfortunately lost a unanimous decision over 10 rounds. It was hard to see this because I really like Jamel Herring. He's a really, really nice guy. And, in boxing there's many nice guys, but he truly is one of the, he's the best of the best guys that I've ever spoken to anyway. So, Jamel Herring, I'm not too sure where he goes from here. Last week he was telling me that he wants the winner of Flanagan and Verdejo. That's not going to be happening now, not at all. I don't know if he needs to move up in weight. I don't know if he needs to move down in weight. I don't know if he needs to possibly look at perhaps changing his trainer. Somebody mentioned to me on Twitter perhaps he should do that. I'm not too sure, but something needs to change. I don't know if he overlooked the guy a little bit, kind of eyeing up the guys at world level, but this is a huge setback. I'm not too sure where he goes from here. He definitely needs to rebuild. He's got Al Heyman in his corner, which is always a good thing. But, I just can't see him becoming a world champion off the back of that performance, unfortunately. I spoke to him just briefly after the fight. We were texting a little bit on the iPhone. And he said to me that he felt he won the fight 6-4 over 10 rounds. And I said to him, but Jamel, you can't go on a, as an away fighter on a home fighter's card, a Floyd Mayweather card at that, and win a fight 6-4 and expect to get the decision. That's too close. And I think he agreed with that. I think he knew that. And, unfortunately, he lost the fight. Some people saying a robbery. I'm not quite sure that was the case. But, very upsetting for Jamel Herring. And, his fans as well, very upset by that, including myself. Also on that bill, Shoki Sakai, 22-7 with one draw. I didn't know a single thing about him apart from he was from Japan going into this fight. He was in an 8-rounder against Ashley Fiafane, our very own member of the Money team. And, it was another huge upset. Ashley Fiafane lost unanimously over 8 rounds. I'm not quite sure why it was even an 8-round fight. I wouldn't have imagined that would have suited Fiafane too much. I think the longer that fight would have gone, it would have probably suited him the better. That's a real tough loss for him as well. That was, I think, his 10th fight maybe with Floyd Mayweather or something like that. His record now 40-8 with one draw. And Shoki Sakai certainly come and shocked Las Vegas there. That's a bad little bit of luck there for Floyd in this huge week for Floyd. That's a bit of bad luck for him. And I'm very gutted there for Fiafane, really. He's a class guy, man. I've seen a lot of people giving him stick on Twitter today. yeah, I think it's a bit out of order, really. He's a really down-to-earth guy, Ashley Theophane, so, you know, we wish him all the very best. Hopefully he can come back a little bit stronger from that. Also on that bill, Juan Carlos Payano, former world champion, his record 18-1 going in. He took on Alexis Santiago, who was 21-4 with one draw. Payano actually got cut on his left eyebrow during the fight. It wasn't the worst cut in the world. The fight managed to go all 10 rounds. It was a unanimous decision for the former world champion. Juan Carlos Payano now 19 wins inside of 20 fights. He's, of course, carrying one loss as well. Right, that's it for the reviewing. We've done all the reviewing there. It's now time to welcome a man who is set to make history in a few weeks' time. We're now going to welcome guest number one. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the super talented and extremely exciting unbeaten super middleweight contender, Mr. David Benavidez. David, welcome to the show.
Hey, what's up, brother? How you doing?
All good, my friend. All good. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm doing very good. I just finished training, actually, so, you know, I feel really good right now.
Excellent, man. Excellent. So, firstly, David, you're a really young guy, obviously. You're only 20 years of age, which is just remarkable, really. I want to ask you, how old were you when you first put on a pair of gloves, David?
I was actually maybe 2, and, you know, I really, started seriously training when I was 3 years old, you know, because I have an older brother. He's 26 years old, and, you know, obviously a little kid always wants to be like the big brother, so everything he did, I would do.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And obviously, you know, you had a short-lived amateur career. You only had 15 fights, but you won all of them. And now as a pro, you're 18-0 with 17 knockouts, as we all know. So you haven't lost a fight, amateur or pro. That must feel pretty good.
Yeah, you know, it's a really good feeling, you know, because maybe it says that everything we've done in the gym up to this point has been right, you know. But I don't rely on anything. I work extremely hard every day in the gym. I try to better myself. You know, I watch the tape of boxing. I try to figure out new moves every day, and you know, I'm only getting better with age. You know, and I feel like, you know, my time is now.
So obviously your next fight has just been announced. You're going to be taking on Ronald Gavril for the vacant WBC World Super Middleweight title. Now we know that Ronald is obviously promoted by Floyd Mayweather. You know, he's trained by a very good trainer as well, and unlike yourself, he's got a very extensive amateur career. Obviously, as we said, you only won, well, you had 15 fights, you won 15. Funny enough, he actually lost 15 fights, but we can't forget he also won 165 fights as well as an amateur. Another thing that makes this fight very exciting is that you can both certainly punch. What do you know about Ronald yourself, apart from all that stuff?
You know, I've been watching him for a while. You know, I watch everybody at the super middleweight division. So when they gave me this fight, you know, I knew it was going to be a really good fight. And those are the types of fights I want. I don't want the easy fights. You know what I mean? I want the hard fights that are going to push me to become a better fighter myself. You know, but I've been watching Gavril lately. He has good speed. He has good power. He looks like he comes forward a lot. I don't know if he's able to box and use the ring, but you know, whatever style he wants to bring September 8th, I'm going to be ready for it. You know, I'm working with guys right now in the gym, sparring that are, you know, brawlers, other dudes that are boxers, you know, so we're mixing in a little bit. You know, we're going to be ready for anything.
And of course, this is also your chance to become the youngest super middleweight world champion in history. Do you know who the youngest super middleweight champion in history at the moment is, by the way?
I forgot his name, but he was 22 years of age.
That's right. Yeah, it was a man called Darren Van Horn. He won the world title when he was 22 years and 8 months old. If you manage to do this, you're going to be 20 years and 8 months old. So basically 2 whole years quicker than the current quickest guy. And 2 years, as we all know, is a huge space of time in boxing. Boxing careers don't last too long. How excited are you to be able to break a record like that? That's phenomenal.
You know, I'm very excited, you know, to only be able to having the chance of fighting for the WBC title. And not only that, you know, being able to make history while doing that as well. You know, it's very exciting. You know, I'm very honored to be in this position. I've been looking forward to this my whole life. And, you know, I've trained basically everything that I've done and I've been through has come up to this moment. You know, I'm extremely ready and prepared to take that title.
And I suppose the title of being the youngest ever super middleweight world champion is probably cooler than what I'm about to tell you. But there's been less than 75 super middleweight champions in history. So if you win this fight, you're going to be, the youngest to ever do that. But I'm going to tell you something that you probably don't know now. And this took me hours and hours to research this. You will be the 15th youngest WBC world champion of all weight classes. And we all know that the WBC belt is the coolest belt. And there's been over 600 WBC champions across the weight classes in history. So you will be number 15. I think if you win this fight, you're just 1 month older than Canelo was when he picked up the junior middleweight title. So, you're in there amongst some fantastic names.
Yeah, I'm glad to like I said, it's an honor to just be able to be in this position where, nothing's come easy. We worked extremely hard to get to this point. And like I said, man, I can't wait to get in there and, just take that title and make history.
And I'm just going to explain now to our listeners who may not know how this title shot came about. So you know what I'm about to say here, but just to quickly let our listeners know if they're a bit confused by the whole thing. Badou Jack was obviously the WBC champion. He vacated the title to move up in weight. So the number 1 and 2 ranked guys were supposed to fight. That was Callum Smith and Anthony Dirrell. Obviously, after some messing around with the fight dates and stuff, Callum Smith decided to sign up to the World Boxing Super Series tournament instead. So then Dirrell had to fight the 3rd ranked guy, which was Avni Yildirim, but Yildirim decided to sign up to the tournament as well, and he's going to be taking on Chris Eubank Jr. in the 1st round, but that's another story. Then Anthony Dirrell had to look at fighting the 4th ranked guy, which was the man we're speaking to now, David Benavidez, and however, after that fight was all signed and sealed, Anthony Dirrell got injured, so then David had to look at the 5th ranked guy, which was Eubank Jr. Eubank Jr., as we said, was in the tournament, and then it came down to Jesse Hart, a man that was on our show a couple weeks ago, but he'd already signed to fight for the WBO world title against Gilberto Ramirez. And then next in line, ranked at number 7, was Patrick Nilsson. He's the only situation that I'm not aware of, but I know that you obviously had to look at number 8, which was Ronald Gavril. So it's been a pretty crazy situation, but if a chance comes up in boxing, especially career-wise, you have to take it, and I'm sure that you know that. I'm sure that you're ready for this. It's a huge opportunity.
And actually, and before we were talking about before this fight came about, even this opportunity came about, after my fight with Porky Medina, I took a week off. My dad told me, you know what, you have to just get in the gym and work, like if a world title's coming next, because you might never know. Somebody could get injured and they could push you up, on the line and fight. And I didn't really think it was going to come about this quick, but I still, training is my number 1 priority, so I always train very hard. And, we just, and this title shot came about, man, it was a really good thing that happened to me, because of course I wanted to fight for a title. And, I thought the latest I was going to fight for a title was maybe beginning of the next year. But, it's like 6 months before next year. So, it worked out really good for me.
Yeah, well done to your father for anticipating something like that. Now, speaking of those guys I just mentioned that were all in line to fight for the title, a few weeks ago we had Callum Smith on the show, and I asked him about your fight at the time you were going to be fighting Anthony Dirrell, and I said, because obviously Callum was supposed to take him on, and he's looked at Dirrell very, very closely, and he actually said to me that he believed that you would beat Dirrell. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. That was a compliment he paid you. And also, a couple weeks ago, we spoke to Jesse Hart, as I said. He was on our show. And he said that he wanted to fight you for quite a while. And he said that he believes, in his words, that you were too young to be in that light, which I think he kind of meant you were too inexperienced to be a threat to him. Do you have any thoughts on that at all, David?
I mean, of course, the dude is showing like a sign of, he's worried a little bit because I'm young and I'm right here and I'm winning these fights and I'm winning them in spectacular fashion. I'm 18-0 with 17 knockouts. How much fights did he have? He hasn't won all of his fights by knockout. He has 6 fights that went the distance. So you tell me who has a higher percentage of power. If he wants to get in the ring, we could do that too. I mean, we could put up if he gets the belt, the WBO belt, and when I win the WBC belt, we could put those titles on the line and we'll see who's the best.
That certainly would be something that would be interesting. Now, most people in your division, they say that the number one guy out of everybody is James DeGale. A lot of people say that. Now, I know that you've been very close with Gilberto Ramirez. I know that you've sparred him a few times, if I'm not mistaken. Who do you see as the number one man right now at 168?
You know, I can't say there's one really top dog in the super middleweight division, because everybody right now, you know, from Callum Smith to Chris Eubanks, Anthony Terrell, Ramirez to Jesse Hart, you know, they're all really good fighters, you know, so I guess I want to be the best in the division, so I guess we're going to have to duke it out and see who ends up at the top, see who's the last man standing.
Yeah,
but you know, the division, I think the division is stacked, you know, and it's just an honor to just be in the division with all these great, you know, potentially fighters. You know, it's gonna be a great year of boxing for the super middleweight division. Not a year, but it's gonna be the upcoming years. The super middleweight division is gonna be great.
Yeah, I totally agree. You're 100% right there. I want to ask you about this fight as well. It's a week after your fight, Triple G Canelo. I know that you've done rounds with Triple G. If I'm not mistaken, I think you've also done some rounds with Canelo, so you should be able to give a good opinion on this one. How do you see it playing out?
You know, I was working for Triple G's last camp. I was working with him, and I was supposed to go over to work with Canelo. But when it was for a week for me to go to Canelo, I think he heard I was working with Triple G, and I don't know, some things he got in his feelings or something, and he just didn't want me to go no more. But I see that fight playing out, you know, as a really good fight. There's going to be a knockout, you know, but I got my guy Triple G, you know, he's a great fighter, he has great power. And I think he sits down on his punches a little bit better than Canelo, but, you know, I'm not doubting Canelo at all. Canelo's a great fighter, so it's going to be whoever wants it more, whoever wants to be the best, whoever truly wants to be the best middleweight, you know, is going to take over.
Yeah, brilliant fight as well. So many great fights being made in boxing now. And now I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here, but I've got a feeling that you're not going to mind too much that I'm going to put you on the spot. I ask everybody this. I like to ask people from overseas who their favourite UK fighter is of all time, but I think I know the answer to that question already without you saying anything.
My favourite UK fighter?
I think you're going to say Prince Nassim Hamed.
Yeah, it's Prince. Number one is Prince. Number two is Joe Kawasaki.
Okay. Do you want to say anything about those guys? Because Prince is probably the most popular answer we get. Everybody loves him.
You know, Prince, you know, growing up, he's one of my favorite fighters. He motivated me a lot. Not only because at the time he was a showman. You know, he was the Money Mayweather before Money Mayweather came about. He was all about business, but he was a different type of fighter. He would go in there and put it all on the line. And his style was way different. He didn't try to be nobody else. He was himself. You know what I mean? And he had awesome power. And you know, that to this day, I kind of like, it's giving me my style, you know, to try to do different things. Try to work on everything in the gym, not just be, you know, one straight fighter, just have one style. Try to be versatile, you know what I mean? I could box, I could brawl, I could do whatever, you know. And then I'm still learning, too. I'm 20 years old, you know, so I still have a heck of a long way to go. You know, but Prince Nassim is definitely one of my favorite fighters of all time.
Yeah, as I say there, most people I ask that question to, they all say Prince. He seems to be loved by everybody, a fantastic fighter, of course. And now, coming down to the last couple questions I've got for you, or the last real question anyway. You don't have to answer this if you don't want to. I wanted to ask you if you have got one. Have you got a prediction for your fight? How do you see yourself winning that fight come September
8th? You know, I'm not overlooking Gavril because I know he's a great fighter. Like I said, I want to go in there every time I go into a fight. I want to give the people, my fans, you know, the people that are just starting to watch me and the people who are just, you know, going by my fights, I want to give them a spectacular fight. And for me saying I'm going to win, it means I'm going to get a knockout. That's what I want to do. You know, not only to win the belt, but I want to win the belt in the state to let everybody know I'm here. Like I did in the Porky fight. I told everybody I'm going to knock Porky out and nobody would believe me. And that's exactly what I did. So this is exactly what I'm going to do to Gavril. I'm going to knock him out. I say I get him out of there in less than 6 rounds.
Less than 6 rounds. Okay, you said it here. Yeah. And also that Porky win, by the way, was a phenomenal fight. I remember watching that just earlier today. I checked the end of that fight again. Unbelievable combination. And finally, just before we let you go, I want to give you an opportunity to send a message to the UK fans out here, a lot of guys out here, true boxing fans, a lot of guys starting to hear your name and starting to believe in you. What's your message to all those guys?
I want to give the thanks to everybody in the UK, for everybody who supports me out there. I really appreciate it so much. And one thing else I got to tell you is it's my lifelong dream to fight in the UK. So maybe, hopefully, if everything goes good, I keep defending. I win the title and I defend it. Maybe I could fight Colin Smith or Chris Fairbanks out there. That would be an amazing accomplishment for me.
Absolutely, that's something we'd certainly love to see. We'd love to see you over here on British soil. Hopefully that does happen down the line. But yeah, for now, that's it, David. It's been a real pleasure interviewing you this week. Thank you for your time. Best of luck in this September 8th fight. And God willing, next time we speak, I'll be speaking to the new WBC Super-Middleweight champion of the world.
All right, thank you very much, brother. And I appreciate your time for interviewing as well.
Okay, now it's time for part 2 on this week's show. This part, of course, the preview part. But before we get into that, Ayaz, I want to go over to you with the latest news. There's only a couple of things I know that we've got to go over. And then, of course, we're going to bring in that little segment where we're going to talk about the number one guys through the weight. So firstly, Ayaz, the latest news.
Carl Frampton has parted ways with Cyclones and Barry McGuigan.
Yes, obviously there were rumours of this happening, before it's been announced. People weren't quite sure whether to believe it or not. I, for one, didn't really believe it because I felt that the partnership that Frampton has had with the McGuigans, both Barry and Shane, have worked really well for him. It's also come at a bit of a strange time because, he had the fight with Santa Cruz, then he had the rematch with Santa Cruz, and not much has happened since then. He's obviously was supposed to fight the other day, and that fight got called off due to a freak accident. It just seems a really untimely breakup. I just can't quite wrap my head around it. It's going to be interesting to see where his next steps really are because, I'm not quite sure what's happening trainer-wise. I don't know if... Has it come out that he's actually leaving Shane McGuigan, or is it just the whole thing with Barry and being his promoter and all the rest of that?
On Shane McGuigan's Twitter, he used to have Frampton, but he doesn't have Frampton anymore.
Oh, that's it then. That says it all. So, yeah, I'm not quite sure where he's going to go, promoter-wise. I know, obviously, he's inked some kind of deal with Al Heyman that's been going on for a while. He's going to need to, obviously, be with a big promoter, not only because he's a big enough name in world boxing, but also because he needs a TV network. So, does he go back to Eddie Hearn? I don't think so, because they can't... Well, I was going to say they can't stand each other. I think Eddie Hearn doesn't mind him. I don't think he can stand Eddie Hearn. Will he go stateside and look at perhaps Bob Arum with the likes of, Michael Conlon coming through? Will he go with Frank Warren? Will he go with MGM? There's obviously friends of his like Paddy Barnes and all these guys that have just turned over, so to speak. He could be doing something like that, but at the moment, it's very hard to try and guess where he's going to go. And as for trainer, I just don't know where he's going to go. But I tell you what, I'm going to log this. This is going to be said on record. You can come back to me if I've got this wrong, but I want to say a prediction here. I believe that Carl Frampton goes one of two ways. He's either going to go with Adam Booth, which, that may or may not happen. I'm not quite sure. Or he goes with David Haye and starts being trained by Ismail Salas. That is my prediction. He goes either to Adam Booth or Ismail Salas. That is what I'm saying. I've got no inside information. That's just a pure guess. That is what I think is going to happen. I know as you probably agree with that. But yeah, that's all I can really say on that one. So if you've got, nothing else to add, then we'll move on to the next.
Yep, and finally, boxing legend Miguel Cotto will retire at the end of the year.
Yes, obviously he's fighting on Saturday. We're going to get to that in a few moments, but it's very interesting. He hasn't said he's retiring after this fight. He's said he's retiring at the end of the year, so maybe he's thinking about having this fight and having one last kind of hurrah, maybe in his native of Puerto Rico. Maybe not. Maybe he is just having this fight and he just decided to say at the end of the year. But it's a strange kind of time to do it. So doesn't look like Liam Smith or Liam Williams is going to be fighting Cotto. So they might be happy about that, to be honest. Depends how he looks on Saturday. But yeah, bit of a strange one. And again, all these people retiring lately, it's just, I don't know who's going to retire next. It just seems to be one great after the other at the moment. So is that it for the news? Yes, Ayaz?
Yes, that's it for the news.
Okay, right. Now let's move over to that little segment. We don't usually do this, but I just want to really go through each division and try to give the number one man at that division. I want your opinion on this as well, so I want you to be here to, to jump in if you disagree with anything I'm about to say. So let's start at the heaviest weight, of course. Let's start at heavyweight. For me, I think the number one man at heavyweight is Anthony Joshua. Do you agree with me on that?
Yes, I do.
I think the reason behind that is purely because the number one man was Vladimir Klitschko, then Tyson Fury beat him and he became the number one man, but he hasn't boxed since, and I feel sorry for him and all that, but it is what it is. So I kind of reinstated Vladimir Klitschko as the man again, because I've said this analogy before. It's like, it's like the heavyweight division's like a school, like an actual, a kid's school, a high school or whatever. And it's like Klitschko being the main man. He's like the bully of that school. And then all of a sudden, Tyson Fury comes from, another school and he beats up the bully. And for now, he's the main man in that school. But then he moves back to his school and he leaves Klitschko behind. So Klitschko is the bully still, because he's better than all the rest of the guys. That's kind of the way I see it. It's a bit of a funny analogy, but that's the kind of way I saw it. So with Fury out the picture, I reinstate Vladimir as the legit top guy. Obviously, he's got a little bit older. He took on Anthony Joshua. Anthony Joshua beat him. Regardless of what you say, he beat him. He stopped him. Some adversities in that fight, some answers in that fight. And yeah, for me, Joshua stands above Wilder because that's the best win on both of their resumes, obviously. So for me, Anthony Joshua is the number one man at heavyweight. Obviously, we've got Wilder and a few other guys in the picture. Joseph Parker would have something to say. And yeah, that's where I've got him. He's the number one heavyweight. Moving down now to cruiserweight, Ayaz, and you may disagree with me here because there's a few guys at cruiserweight. It's kind of like a fresh crop of talent that's come through. Obviously, we've got the likes of, Maris Bridis. He's there. He's 32 years old. He's 22-0, 18 knockouts. You've got Alexander Usyk. He's 30 years old. Hasn't been a pro for too long. 12-0 with 10 knockouts. We're going to definitely see a lot of, answers to these questions, so to speak, when we see this World Boxing Super Series tournament at cruiserweight. You've got Krzysztof Glowacki. He's in there as well with a shout, 27-1. Alexander Usyk beat him pretty handily though. You've got Murat Gasayev. He's 24-0 with 17 knockouts. He's 23, so he's the youngest of the batch. Very talented guy as well. Denis Lebedev, really the old one, 30-0 with, 30-2 with 22 knockouts. I don't think that he's at the top. And then you've got Marco Huck, and then of course you've got a man that we're going to be speaking to a little bit later on in the show, who's actually also going to be fighting on the Mayweather-McGregor undercard this week. Also, you've got Dmitry Kudrashov, 21-1 with 21 knockouts, and the one loss was a knockout as well. He's always in exciting fights. It's a who's who of names, really. It's, there's a lot there. It's hard to kind of pick a guy, but for me, I'd probably say Alexander Usyk probably just nicks it. And it's a bit harsh because, as I say, he's only had 12 fights, but in those 12 fights, he's looked so dominant. He didn't look his best against Michael Hunter, but he beat him. He had him down as well in the last round. Obviously, he beat Machunu, had him down 3 times in that fight. The Glowacki win was a really, really good win. He almost shut him out on one of the cards, and I just think he's looked pretty good. As I say, 10 knockouts, but his last fight wasn't a knockout over Hunter, and also he didn't knock out Glowacki. So when he steps up the level a little bit, maybe he's not. I don't know. I don't want to say his power's not there, but maybe he can't get the knockout against some of these guys who are a little bit technically sounder than the other guys, if you like. So yeah, but I'd say Usyk's probably the best at cruiserweight. What's your take on that one, Ayaz?
Yes, I agree with. I go with Usyk as well because, in my opinion, I reckon he's the best cruiserweight. He's the best cruiserweight out there at the moment. And in my opinion, in the cruiserweight tournament, I reckon he's gonna be the favorite to win it.
Yeah, definitely. And also at light heavyweight, let's try to go through this a little bit quickly now. I think it's really not up for debate. I did have Kovalev being the number one man, despite obviously Adonis Stevenson taking the WBC title hostage. He doesn't really fight any top guys. You know, it's not very exciting when he fights at all. But I mean, obviously this weekend we're going to see, you know, Nathan Cleverly and Badu Jack. That's going to be an interesting fight. We're going to get to that shortly. There's a few guys at that weight as well, as I said, like Gvozdyk, like Beterbiev, but for me, Kovalev was the main man. He got beat in the first fight with Andre Ward, and then the second fight was a little bit more clearer, that win for Andre Ward. So for me, Andre Ward is undisputedly the top man at that weight. Do you agree with that, Ayaz?
Yes, I agree with that as well.
Yeah, moving down to super middle now. Again, a few good fighters there, a few undefeated fighters. Gilberto Ramirez, he's only 26 years old. He's 35-0 with 24 knockouts. Chris Eubank Jr. is there. George Groves is there. James DeGale's there. Callum Smith, the two Durrell brothers. Arthur Abraham, you know, a few undefeated guys coming up. You've got Chudinov in there. The man that we spoke to a little bit earlier, David Benavidez, is in there. Again, you know, these are all potentially the top number one guys in the future. But for me right now, in terms of resume and all the rest of it and the results, I think I've got to give it to James DeGale. Really and truly, he could be unbeaten. That fight with George Groves, his only loss, was very close. So for me, I think James DeGale gets it over Gilberto Ramirez.
Yes, I agree with that as well, Joey. I think James DeGale, I'll choose James DeGale off his recent performances. That's how I'll go, James DeGale for super middleweight.
And down at middleweight now, I've definitely, it's been Golovkin. It's been Golovkin for a long time. Some of the examples I've given over, like, you know, up at heavyweight, up at light heavyweight, is all the story, the reason of why I've given it to this guy is because, well, it used to belong to this guy. There is no used to here. Golovkin has been the man at middleweight for a long, long time now, in my opinion. You know, you'd have to kind of go back to Sergio Martinez, not in his last couple of fights, but a little while before that, to kind of say that was the man that had a shout. But now, Golovkin is simply the main man there. But I will say, the winner of him and Canelo next month will determine who is the real king of that division. But as it stands, I've got to give it to Golovkin. I'm not even going to ask you your opinion, Ayaz. I know that you totally agree with me there. Moving down to 154 now, super welterweight / junior middleweight. There's a lot of talent there. I've said it for a long time. You've got Liam Smith, you've got Jarrett Hurd, obviously unbeaten world champion, 20-0. You've got Demetrius Andrade, really good fighter, 24-0. You've got Jamel Charlo, the WBC champion, 29-0. You've got Lara, though. He's the man that sticks out at the top for me. Hasn't got the prettiest record on paper, but his two losses have been to Canelo and Paul Williams, which was, you know, both fights were very, very controversial. So for me, I think Lara just about grabs the number one spot for me at super welterweight. You may have a different opinion, Ayaz. What's your opinion on that one?
It's between the Jamel Charlo or Islam Lara. I can't really choose with that one. It's a very tough one. If I have to go, I might have to go with Lara. I think Lara's done good, and he just lost that, in my opinion, to Canelo.
Yeah. I mean, you know, he's probably got the better names on his resume, so I think we'd have to give it to him. Now, down at welterweight, where there's always been a real mix of talent there. There's so many really good guys at welterweight. Via BoxRec, they actually put Jeff Horn as the number one. I'm not going to be going with that nonsense. He did beat, however, in my opinion, the number one. I would have given the number one spot, if you'd have asked me a few months ago, to Manny Pacquiao, purely because, you know, he hadn't lost for a long time, obviously, since the Floyd, the Floyd loss, which you can't really blame him for that. But even still, Floyd, you know, he retired. He's come back, obviously, this week. So, yeah, for me, it was Manny Pacquiao. Despite him aging, we hadn't seen him lose a fight. So, you know, Jeff Horn beating him, and it was a real terrible version of Pacquiao. Jeff Horn doesn't become number one, sorry. I'm going to give it to Keith Thurman, and the reason behind that is simply because he's got the wins over, you know, a quite old and quite shot version of Robert Guerrero. I'll be honest about that, but of course he fought Sean Porter and Danny Garcia, two guys that are serious guys, and he fought them back to back. Saying that, he only won those fights I mean, he won the Danny Garcia fight by a split decision. I think that was a bit crazy, one of those cards, but it was still a pretty close fight. And the Sean Porter fight was very much the same. There was only 2 points in that across all 3 scorecards. Also, you've got to mention he got a win over Bundu. It wasn't a very impressive performance. I mean, he shut him out and he had him down in the first round. But you know, if you look at that win compared to the job that Errol Spence did on Bundu, it doesn't look so good. He also got the win, of course, over Luis Collazo. So I think for him, he's got the best resume at 147. You know, without Manny Pacquiao, obviously, but he's still undefeated. Keith Thurman, he's now 28-0 with 22 knockouts. So for me, he's number one. Some people would disagree. Some people would say Errol Spence is the number one guy, and the reason why I don't give it to him is because his real top opponent, he's only got one real standout name, and that's Kell Brook. And Kell Brook, I'm not trying to make excuses, but that fight was very close until the later rounds where he crashed the weight, we all know. And also, of course, the injury, and he was coming off a loss. He was coming off of quite a long layoff. It was all stacked against Kell Brook. The only thing he had in his favour was the fact that it was in Sheffield. Aside from Kell Brook, his resume, if you look at that, Bundu's on it. Yeah, it was an impressive knockout in round 6, but you know, let's be honest, Bundu is Bundu. He's, 40-odd years old. But no, as I did say, this win looks better than the win that Keith Thurman got over Bundu. Aside from him, you've got to look at the likes of Chris Algieri. He knocked him out in 5 rounds, okay, but Chris Algieri is quite limited. Also on that resume as well, Chris Van Heerden, he got him out of there as well. But aside from that, I mean, he's beat some other good guys, don't get me wrong, but just the pure fact that he beat Keith Thurman, beat Danny Garcia, and he beat Sean Porter, he's just got the better wins. Those two there. I'm not saying they're as good as Kell Brook, because for me, I would have picked Kell Brook to beat Sean Porter and to beat Danny Garcia. I was calling for the Danny Garcia-Kell Brook fight for a long time, but Keith Thurman beat both of those guys, and they're all kind of around the same sort of level. And I'm not quite sure what Kell Brook has left to offer since that Golovkin fight. So for me, Keith Thurman just pinches that number one spot. What's your opinion on that one, Ayaz? Do you put Keith Thurman at the top of 147?
Yes, I would. I'll put Keith Thurman because of his recent performance.
Yeah. And now going down to 140, we're going to, again, try to go through this as quick as we can. I just want to give reason behind all this. And again, if you want to get involved in this, hit us up on Twitter at BoxHard Podcast. You can have your say. We'll read out as many tweets as we get. At 140, Terence Crawford, he's got all 4 of the belts, so you can't really complain about that. He is the man there. It's undoubted. He is the true man there. Mikey Garcia at the moment is actually rated at 140 because of his recent win over Adrian Broner. That was at 140, of course, but I'm not going to include him in there. But even if he was included, I think you've got to give it to Crawford purely because he is the man at 140. Mikey Garcia has not really had the fights at 140 to kind of stake a claim. There's not really much at 140 to really to even really be in there with a shout. Terence Crawford, he's head and shoulders, head, shoulders, legs and feet above everybody. He's much better than the guys at 140. I know that you're not going to argue with that one, Ayaz. Going down now to lightweight, here is where it gets a little bit tricky. Some people would definitely say it's Linares. Some people would definitely say it's Mikey Garcia. Some people, especially from Cincinnati, Ohio, would go with Robert Easter Jr. Some people from Manchester might even throw Terry Flanagan in there. Some people from Hull might even throw Luke Campbell in the mix. But for me, it's got to be Mikey Garcia. I think he's better than Jorge Linares. You might disagree, Ayaz. How do you see the lightweight division?
In my opinion, I'm going to have to go with Mikey Garcia because of his recent performance. Obviously, you've seen who he's fought. He's beaten Zlatan Cannon. He's fought. The way he beat up Adrian Broner, it was just too much. And I think Mikey Garcia, I reckon, is the best fighter in that division.
Yeah, you'd have to give it to Mikey. As I said, I'm not trying to knock Jorge Linares. He's a top talent, but I just think at this point of his career, and I know he looked really good against Crolla, but that's against Crolla. It's I was really looking at the Luke Campbell-Linares fight the other day, really thinking about it. And do you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if Luke Campbell causes a lot of problems. And I was, from the minute it's been made, I've always been saying it's an easy knockout for Linares. He's going to stop him. And I'm not saying that's not going to happen, but there's a bit of me what kind of thinks that Luke might be a bit too fresh for him. I hope that is the case because I want the Brit to win, of course. But, Linares isn't he couldn't beat Mikey Garcia. That's my honest opinion. It'd be a great fight though, don't get me wrong. I do want to see that unification. Now moving down to super featherweight, there really is one man at it. He's the number one pound for pound boxer in my opinion, Ayaz. I think you'd probably put him number one pound for pound in your top list as well. It's definitely got to be Lomachenko. Do we even need to say any more?
No, Lomachenko's too good.
Yeah, definitely Lomachenko. Moving down now to featherweight, we mentioned Carl Frampton a little bit earlier. You've got Gary Russell Jr. there as well. You've got Lee Selby, a few others. Josh Warrington obviously creeping into the top 10 in a few of the bodies. Leo Santa Cruz, though, for me, Ayaz probably gets that. I think it was a close fight, but he lost that fight at the first time round against Frampton. He was much better in the second fight. It's a shame he hasn't honoured his word and come over to Ireland to have the third fight. But for me, as it stands, I think Leo Santa Cruz is the top man at featherweight.
I have to agree with you that he's only got one loss on his record. They came to Carl Frampton, but in my opinion, I'm going to have to go with Leo Santa Cruz.
Yeah, I agree. And now moving down to bantamweight, let's try to whiz through this now. Coming down to super bantamweight. We're at super bantamweight. You've got to look at Rigondeaux. I think he's the man at super bantamweight. Do you agree with me, Ayaz? He's the main man. He hasn't really got some of the top names. Fighting the likes of Jazza Dickens doesn't do your credibility too much, but aside from that, he's a really good fighter. I
mean, he's fought Jazza Dickens. He's beaten Nonito Donaire. So in my opinion, I'm gonna have to go.
That's the main. Yeah, that's the real main name on his resume, Nonito Donaire. Moving down now to bantamweight, you've got Jamie McDonnell, you've got Yamanaka, you've got Zolani Tete. This is a very hard one. This one, Ryan Bennett's also there as well. Obviously, Lee Haskins, a few other guys. You've got Zanat Zakhanov as well, who's going to be unifying with Ryan Burnett. For me, you've probably got to give it to Yamanaka, but the bad thing is he lost his world title last week, and I've heard, I don't want to go on record and say this because I'm not 100% sure it's been confirmed, but I've heard that the guy he lost to, Luis Neri, who's from Mexico, he's 22 years old, he just turned 24-0, and he stopped Yamanaka. Apparently he's just failed a drugs test, so I'm not quite sure what the situation is going to be with that. So he may lose the title and Yamanaka may be reinstated, so you'd probably have to give it to Yamanaka for the meantime, but I think Jamie McDonnell definitely deserves a shout. What's your take on that one, Ayaz?
I'm going to have to probably go with Jamie McDonnell because I'll tell you one thing, he won the IBF belt, lost the IBF belt and won the WBA belt. And since then, he's defended it and he's won it a successful time. So I'm going to have to go with Jamie McDonnell in the bantamweight division.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, he's in there with a shout. I think, if you're looking at Yamanaka, though, some people putting him in their pound-for-pound list. Listen, it's that'd be a great fight. I'd like to see that fight, but of course, Yamanaka's got a few problems at the moment with this whole situation with Luis Neri and the WBC belt. So, we'll leave that there. Moving down to super flyweight now. The one man down here for me is Chocolatito Roman Gonzalez. Even though he lost that fight, and I think he did lose that fight to that man from Thailand with a few names, and some people have got him at the top of the list. They're going to be having a rematch. I think he's going to win that fight. Cal Yafai, of course, also at super flyweight, also a world champion there. John Real Casemiro as well. But for me, I think we're going to give it to Chocolatito Roman Gonzalez. I think you agree with me on that one, Ayaz.
Oh, yes, definitely have to agree with you on that. I'll tell you one thing. If Chocolatito Roman Gonzalez didn't get the cut on the fight, I reckon he may have would have won the fight.
Yeah, I think the cut really seemed to bother him. I think we've said that a few times on this show. And now moving down to flyweight, I think this is going to be the last division that we're going to look at. I'm starting to look at some of these names and I'm not quite sure who they are. That's the casual in me coming out a little bit, I suppose. Andrew Selby's obviously up there with a shout. We need to see him in a big fight soon, and I've got a feeling it will be coming. You've got Donny Nietes, who's 40-1 with 4 draws. I'd probably say him, to be completely honest. And also you've got Kazuto Ioka, who's 22-1. That one loss coming to Amnat Ruanrong, who obviously he lost to John Real Casimero. So it's all a bit of a, everybody's kind of fought everybody down at these low weights, and we need to see Andrew Selby in and around this mix with these top few fighters. But for me, I think I'm going to give it probably to Donny Nietes, the Filipino native. So that's it. And I don't think we're going to go any further. I don't think we're going to go down to light flyweight or anything like that, or minimum weight. I think we're going to leave that there. So that's it. We've given our top fighters from heavyweight all the way down to flyweight as promised. Let's now kick on with the previewing. Of course, it's going to be, there's a few things to go over. It's arguably going to be the biggest week of boxing in history. So let's waste no time. Let's get on with it. Let's start, though, with a card happening on Friday at the Buffalo Run Casino in Miami, Oklahoma, USA. One fight to mention over here. Torino Johnson, 20-1, takes on Sergey Derevyanchenko, 10-0. That's a really, really good fight, by the way. That's going to be on Fox Sports 1. Lou DiBella, the promoter of that show. Sergey Derevyanchenko, obviously, a decorated amateur. Torino Johnson, obviously, the home fighter, only one loss on the resume. Good pro as well. Can't remember who he lost to now. It slipped my mind, but that should be a really good fight. I just thought we'd give that a mention. The undercard doesn't look all that great, though. Moving over now to the Grand Casino in Hinckley, Minnesota, USA. One fight to mention on this bill. Friend of the show now. He was on last week's show, I think, or maybe the week before. Can't remember now. Hasim Rahman Jr. His record 2-0 with 2 knockouts, both in the first round, by the way. He's in a 4-rounder against Danielle Williams, who's also 2-0. And I didn't know anything about him, but Hasim Rahman told me he's got an MMA background. I think he's got 1 stoppage out of his 2 fights, and I think he's been a bit of a knockout artist in his MMA background. So all the very best to Hasim Rahman Jr. He did say to me on last week's show that he's going to be coming over to the UK to fight very soon, so I'm very excited about that. All the very best to Hasim Rahman Jr. Now moving over to the Rainbow Towers Conference Centre in Zimbabwe. One fight to mention over there, Ilunga Makabu, former opponent of Tony Bellew. His record at the moment 20-2. He's had 1 fight since being knocked out by Bellew, but this is his 2nd fight back. It's an 8-rounder. He takes on a man called Musa Ajibu. And, we're probably the only podcast that actually mentions fights like this over in Zimbabwe at the Rainbow Towers Conference Centre. Nobody else probably talks about that. The promoter is a man called Steve Kalakoda. Who knew it? He takes on, as I said, Makubu. He takes on Musa Ajibu, who's got a record of 28-9 with 5 draws. All love to Makabu over there in Zimbabwe. And now moving over to the Plaza del Toros in Benidorm, Comunidad Valenciana, Spain. One fight to mention over here, Kiko Martinez. He's back in Spain. He's back fighting a man that we've never heard of. He's back racking up the wins on that ever-padded record, I suppose. The promoter, by the way, is Sergio Martinez, a man that we mentioned earlier with a shout to be the top man at middleweight a few years ago. So he's the home promoter here in Spain. Kiko Martinez, 37-8 with 1 draw. He takes on Lorenzo Parra, who's got a record of 32-12 with 2 draws. It's an 8-rounder there for Kiko Martinez. And now moving over to the big one, I suppose, this weekend at the T-Mobile Arena, Las Vegas, Nevada, USA. We're going to start with the undercard. We're going to mention Savannah Marshall, the Brit, making her debut here. She's, of course, being promoted by Floyd Money Mayweather. She's in a 4-rounder. That's 4 2-minute rounds against Sydney LeBlanc, who's got a record of 4 wins, 3 losses, and 1 draw. So a winning record against Savannah Marshall there. All the very best to her. Also on that bill, Kevin Newman, he gets out against Mark Antonio Hernandez. Kevin Newman 7-0 with 1 draw. Mark Anthony Hernandez 9-1. Also on that bill, Andrew Tabiti 14-0. 12 of those wins by knockout. He puts his NABF Cruiserweight title on the line against Steve Cunningham. We're going to be speaking to Steve Cunningham very shortly. His record 29-8 with 1 draw. And of course, he's the former 2-time Cruiserweight champion of the world. All the very best to Steve Cunningham. We're going to be speaking to him very shortly. Also on that bill, Javonte Tank Davis, 18-0, puts his IBF World Super Featherweight title on the line against Francisco Fonseca. A lot of people have been a bit angry with his choice of opponent with Fonseca here. do you know what? I've looked a little bit, I've looked at some of his fights. He's not as bad as some people are kind of saying. This fight's not as bad as what some people are suggesting it is. He's a good fighter, man. He's not that bad. He's decent. But believe me, I think that Gervonta Davis is certainly the classier fighter, certainly the better fighter, certainly the fresher fighter, and he's got the real names on his resume. Francisco Fonseca hasn't really fought at this level, but nonetheless, somebody's O has got to go, and that's the same for the main event that we're going to be talking about in just a moment. Also on this bill, Yordenis Ugas, 19-3. It was supposed to be Sean Porter, but he had to step in because somebody in Sean Porter's family passed away, so he wasn't ready for the fight, and he steps in against Thomas Delorme, 24-2. That should be okay, I suppose. Also on the bill, the real best kind of fight in terms of competitiveness on this bill, Nathan Cleverly puts his WBA World Light Heavyweight title on the line against Badou Jack. Nathan Cleverly 30-3, Badou Jack 21-1 with 2 draws. This is, of course, Badou Jack's first fight up at light heavyweight since relinquishing his super-middleweight world title, and he let that title go, he vacated it, and that title's now on the line for David Benavidez, who we spoke to earlier in the show. It's all a bit of a mashup this week. Firstly, Ayaz, let me talk to you about the Nathan Cleverly Badou Jack fight. As I said, it's the first fight for Badou Jack at this new weight. Cleverly, of course, he's been out the ring for a little while now, but he looked good in his last fight. He's got the punch output. Can he make it uncomfortable for Jack? Can he win in Las Vegas, more importantly?
Oh, that's a very tough one. I'll tell you one thing. If I'm going to go for a choose or win, I'm going to go for Badou Jack. A, it's in Vegas, yeah? And B, he's going to have all the home support with him, right? And obviously the thing is now, Cleverly hasn't fought since November. And that's the last time he fought was against Jürgen Bremer, which he stopped. And obviously, because he ain't been out the ring, he's got a lot of ring rust in him. What if I was Cleverly, I would have had like a little warm-up match and then go into the Jack fight. But if I'm going to go for a win, I'm going to have to go for Jack.
Yeah, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I saw a tweet from Eddie Hearn the other day. And I was going through my tweets on Twitter, and it was like all the tweets that I've liked. And Eddie Hearn, I'm sure he first mentioned the Badou Jack Nathan Cleverly fight. I'm sure he mentioned it in March. And they've kind of been hanging out to get this fight, and it was going to happen 1 minute, then it wasn't. So it wasn't looking like it was going to happen. It wasn't really close to being a done deal, and then it kind of got close again. It's been a little bit back and forth, so I don't really blame Cleverly for not having a fight in the meantime, because again, you can't really have warm-up fights when you're an active world champion. So Badou Jack, he last fought in January of this year, and that was obviously against James DeGale. That was a draw, a majority draw, and that was a tough fight in some stages of that fight. So hopefully that's took a little bit of steam out of him. But for me, I think if I had to give a prediction, I think it's Badou Jack on points. Did you say Badou Jack on points as well?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, so I think Badou Jack probably wins that fight on points, unfortunately, but I do want to see Nathan Cleverly retain his title here and get the win. But no, you know what? The funny thing about Badou Jack, I was talking to him back in May, and I was talking to him and Ashley Fearfane. They were over in the UK, and I put my arm around Badou Jack, and I got to tell you this: it was so weird. I know he wasn't in the gyms training, so to speak. He'd been out the ring for a while, but he just kind of had that body type, like. I don't know, it's so hard to explain. Sometimes you put your arm around a boxer and they're solid, they're absolutely solid, like they're really in good shape. And Badou Jack, I'm not saying he wasn't in shape when I saw him. He looked like he was, he didn't look like he put on loads of weight, but he kind of had this like soft kind of like skin. I can't, it sounds really wrong, but like I put my arm around him, he just kind of seemed like, I don't want to say flabby, that's the wrong word, but he was really kind of soft. Like, I don't know, he just didn't seem like a solid boxer. You wouldn't have put your arm around him going, oh, he's a tough guy. It just didn't seem like, he kind of had this, it was really weird. I can't explain it. It was just like, I don't know, he just didn't seem solid. So moving up in weight, I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see. I mean, I don't know if that even holds any kind of, credibility, what I'm saying there, if that even means a single thing. But it was just striking. I put my arm around him. It felt like I was putting my arm around my cousin, or one of my friends or something like that. He didn't seem like a boxer. I don't know. It's really weird. It's probably to no avail. It probably doesn't mean a single thing, but I thought I'd throw that in there anyway, as we do. We like to throw out weird stuff. That's it for that one. Moving over now to the main event, of course. A man in one corner, Floyd Mayweather Jr. It's actually happening. Ayaz 49-0. He puts his O on the line against Conor McGregor. He puts his O on the line as well, of course. He's got 0-0 as his record. No wins, no losses. He's making his debut here. He's going to make more money in his debut than any boxer has ever made in his debut. And not only that, he's going to make more money in this fight here than most boxers will make in their entire career. Times 10. Or even more, probably times 100. He's going to make some serious dosh. I can't really talk too much about this fight because I don't really know much about Conor McGregor, but we've all seen the little footage of, the little sparring footage with Paulie Malignaggi, that about 15 seconds of it or so. And even though, I've got to be honest, I really do like Paulie, but even though we saw a 15-minute cut-up clip, in that 15-minute clip, a 15-second clip, and it has all been cut up and edited and put in great angles and all that, Paulie Malignaggi took a bit of a beating for that 15 seconds. So that was a little bit, it didn't look good. It really didn't look good. So it is what it is. But Paulie Malignaggi, again, is a retired boxer. So, make of that what you will. Conor McGregor's a southpaw. Floyd Mayweather has had problems with southpaws. I suppose we've got to bring that point up. He's sometimes had problems with southpaws when you think of, the likes of Zab Judah and all these other things. And also the rumour going around that Zab Judah apparently knocked Floyd out in sparring the other day. It just sounds like a load of made-up nonsense. But, I can't believe I'm even talking about this fight. It is simply a circus. Floyd Mayweather is going to toy with Conor McGregor. I don't even know if I want that to happen. I've got two horses in this race kind of thing. That's what I'm going to say. The reason behind that is I don't really like Floyd, so I'd like to see McGregor beat him. However, the loss for boxing is greater than my dislike for Floyd Mayweather. The whole of boxing would take a nosedive. It would kill the sport of boxing. It really would. Some people, by the way, saying that this is bad for boxing, this fight. It's not. This brings boxing a hell of a lot of publicity. There's guys out there. You're either an MMA guy or you're a boxing guy. I'm a boxing guy. Ayaz is a boxing guy. Some people listening right now may be MMA guys, and they might be here to hear our point on this whole crazy fight. And there's a lot of guys that say boxing's better than MMA. There's a lot of guys that say MMA is better than boxing. It really comes down to this. If Conor McGregor was to step foot in that ring and beat Floyd Mayweather, it would be the biggest upset in history, and it would kill boxing because it would make boxers look stupid. So I cannot let that happen to boxing. So for me, I've got to go with Money Mayweather. Also, my head goes with Money Mayweather. He should win this fight. He should toy with Conor McGregor. And really and truly, he should stop Conor McGregor. That is what I'm going to say about it. Other than that, I can't see it being competitive. But like I say, this is good for the sport of boxing. It brings a lot of attention to the sport of boxing, and a lot of MMA fans will be watching this and they will become boxing fans as soon as the fight's over with. Ayaz, I'm just going to really give it to you. What is your opinion on this whole fight? We all know it's a bit of a circus. Some people say McGregor's going to win. He's even been saying this week that he's going to stop Mayweather with inside one round. It sounds crazy.
Do you know what? Listen, this is a joke of a fight. It's weird because it's an MMA fighter, right? Conor McGregor fighting a boxer who's, in my opinion, is the best boxer in this generation. You're 49-0 and you're fighting a guy that's not even had one boxing match in his entire life, and you're fighting Floyd Mayweather, right? A lot of UFC fans, McGregor's gonna win. McGregor will not win. I'll tell you where it's gonna go, yeah? Some people are saying knockout. The last time Floyd Mayweather knocked out a fighter was Victor Ortiz, and that was in 2011. I'm going to go for Floyd Mayweather points win. I reckon Floyd Mayweather just going to play about with him the whole fight. Like I said, last time he knocked out a guy was Victor Ortiz, and I reckon this fight will go to points, and that's when Floyd Mayweather's going to win. It's going to be a 50th win.
And of course, when he gets that 50th win, he will break Rocky Marciano's record. A lot of people, as you say there, why is he having this fight? Do you know what? I will give him a bit of a pass, because if he fought Conor McGregor in his second or third pro fight, there would have been no complaints. The only thing he's doing is he's actually having this fight the wrong way round, so to speak. You know, if he actually takes in points, it's kind of embarrassing. It is kind of embarrassing. If he cannot knock this guy out, it is embarrassing. And as you say there, last time Floyd got a knockout was against Victor Ortiz, and we all know what happened in that fight. That wasn't even a proper knockout. That was a joke that day. And I think for me, his last proper legit knockout was against Ricky Hatton. That was a long time ago. But here we are with Conor McGregor. I just cannot... I can't even say any more words about it. This is an absolute joke of a fight. And all these crazy people, these crazy... you know, combat sports people, these MMA guys, they are making this fight such a huge, huge fight. It's going to be possibly the highest grossing boxing event of all time. It's going to surpass Mayweather Pacquiao. Let's see. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. We're going to have to wait and see. But I tell you one thing is for sure. This is unbelievable. This is crazy. Mayweather, Pacquiao, we all know it was a terrible fight, but both men, you know, again, I think someone else said it. On fight week, some people were split. And we're not talking about guys who don't know boxing. We're talking about proper boxing people. Some people thought that Pacquiao was going to win. I actually thought Pacquiao was going to win. And I'm going to be honest about that. Floyd Mayweather had his people backing him to win. And of course he did win. This fight, no boxing person, unless they're Irish. I've seen, what's his name? What's that guy's name? He's fighting in America, Irish guy. We've had him on the show before. It's completely slipped my head. Oh man, Jason Quigley. Yeah, that's it. Jay Quigley. Yeah, he is strongly going with Conor McGregor. It can only be because he's Irish. There's no way. You know, I've spoke to Quigley. I've said, what do you think about Golovkin? And he will give you a really intelligent breakdown. He will tell you what Golovkin does right and wrong. He knows his boxing. He's a good undefeated fighter, a possible future world champion. There's no way on earth he truly thinks that Conor McGregor's going to win this fight. He's going with him because they're both from Ireland. I don't care what no one says. Nobody in the actual boxing fraternity, unless they are Irish or they know Conor McGregor, is giving him a chance here. But do you know what? If he were to pull it off just because Floyd got old, and it's not so much overnight, Floyd's been out the ring for a long, long time. If he shows his age in this fight and Conor McGregor comes through, it will be shocking. And could you imagine how much money the rematch would make? Oh boy. But no, for me, I think Mayweather's definitely going to be on his A game. He wants to break that record. But I tell you what, so many people have been so close to doing it and so many people haven't done it. So that is something there. But that's about it. That's the only chance I give McGregor. If Floyd is suddenly really old and McGregor's, you know, can jump on him early, probably, that's it. But I don't even give him a chance. It's like Floyd. It's like the great Muhammad Ali said. What's the chance? You know, what's the chance on somebody beating me? 2 chances. Slim and none. That's what I say to Conor McGregor. But like I say, if he won, it'd just be the biggest upset ever. But that's it. There's nothing else to say about it. I can't give a tactical breakdown because he's never had a damn fight in boxing. That's it for Las Vegas. Moving over now to the StubHub Center in Carson, California, USA. The final bill to mention of this week. It's a shame that both bills are going to be happening at the same time. One's on Sky Sports pay-per-view over here, £20. It's not the $100 charge in the United States. And one card's going to be on Box Nation. The Box Nation card, however, is the Miguel Cotto card. His record 40-5. He takes on Yoshishiro Kamagai 27-3 with 2 draws. I've only seen Kamagai fight once, and it was that really good fight. I think it might have even been fight of the year against Robert Guerrero, but let's be honest, it was an aged Robert Guerrero. But it was a really, really, really good fight. And, you know, Kamagai can certainly dog it out, whereas Miguel Cotto, he's been in a few of those fights now, and I actually think this fight's going to be somewhat competitive. I can't pick against Cotto, but he's not been active lately, and Kamagai has been. So for me, I mean, I'm going to go with Miguel Cotto to win, but I don't think it's going to be, you know, I don't think he's going to have it all his own way. That one is also for the vacant WBO World Super Welterweight title. And also on that bill, Ray Vargas, 29-0. We saw him come over here and win that fight against Gavin McDonnell, a real heartbreak over here in Doncaster. Ray Vargas looks to move to 30-0. He takes on a man as well who's actually had 29 fights as well, but his record is 28-1 in the shape of Ronnie Rios. This one is the defense for Ray Vargas. He defends his WBC World Super Bantamweight title. This fight, by the way, has gone under the radar. Let me just tell you that much. The only loss on Ronnie Rios' record was to Robinson Castellanos, whose record doesn't look great, but he beat Yuriorkis Gamboa. He went on to beat him obviously after that fight. So that's not a bad man to lose to, so to speak. But Ray Vargas looked really good against Gavin McDonnell, and he could potentially be one of the best at super bantamweight if you get Rigondeaux out of the way. He's probably second best, but we need to see more of him. So we're going to see more of him here. I'm going to definitely set that one up to tape. I'm going to be watching the Mayweather card primarily, though, I've got to be honest. But yeah, no, that's another really good fight on the weekend. So Ray Vargas there against Ronnie Rios, Miguel Cotto against Yoshiro Kamagai, and that is it really. There's a bit of an undercard there, but no one really stands out to me. No one really is going to get a mention. I think we've done enough talking, Ayaz. We've done the reviewing. We brought in guest number one. It was great speaking to David Benavidez. Some fiery words there for Jesse Hart as well. That'd be great to see a unification with those guys and a few of our Brits as well in that super middleweight mix. Then we did the news. There was a couple things to mention. Then we did, of course, the little segment where we went through heavyweight all the way down to flyweight and gave our best fighters, mine and Ayaz's. We agree on quite a few of those things there. Then we've previewed just there all the fights from this weekend. You went with Conor McGregor to lose a decision to Floyd. I'm going to go, Ayaz, with Conor McGregor to get stopped by Floyd. That is what I'm going down with. So we're going to check in next week with the reviewing. And we're going to see where we are in the prediction league and all the rest of it. And as I said, we've wrapped up the preview and that's it. There's one last thing to do. It's to speak to a man that is going to be part of this huge bill on Saturday night. It's, of course, time to welcome guest number 2. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the former 2-time IBF Cruiserweight champion of the world, Steve Cunningham. Steve, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me again, man. I really appreciate it.
It's always my pleasure, Steve. With you, it truly is. So, Steve, we last spoke in April. It was just a few weeks after your win over Felipe Romero. When we spoke, I know that you were hoping for a big fight next. You've got it here. Firstly, before we talk about the fight itself, how excited are you to be boxing on possibly the biggest boxing event of all time, the Floyd Mayweather versus Conor McGregor undercard this weekend?
Man, it hasn't really hit me yet, man. It really hasn't. I don't want it to hit me at all. I just want to go in and do my job, but, without those extra added nerves. It ain't the biggest event in the world, but it is the biggest event, in boxing ever. So it's beyond exciting, man. It's like it could be paralyzing, But and I've headlined shows in Germany, Poland, here in America, but this is on another level, man. So, it's basically I got to take that and turn it into fuel, and get a victory.
And of course, you're going to be the away fighter in this fight. You're going to be the away fighter. You're taking on Floyd Mayweather's boxer by the name of Andrew Tabiti. Now, Andrew Tabiti is obviously trained by Floyd Mayweather Sr. He's 14-0 with 12 knockouts. He seems to be a pretty good talent, to be completely honest, but this is a huge, huge step up for him. Obviously, he's the champion in this fight because he's putting his NABF Cruiserweight title on the line, but you've been there, you've done it, you've got the t-shirt. This is a huge step up for him. What do you know about him yourself, and how do you rate him as a fighter?
I've actually commentated his fight against Garrett Wilson, I think a year and a half ago. He's a good fighter, got good skill, good decent skill, good. He got a good trainer in his corner, so that's a plus. He's got athletic build. He moves. He jabs. He's got a good repertoire of punches, and I can't say nothing negative about him except for inexperience. The guys he's been fighting, they're not on the level of which he's going to see Saturday. I'm able to do all kind of different things: move, stand there, high guard, hands down. take a shot, give a shot, you know. So if a fight breaks out, I'm able to do that. We don't know if he's able to do that. You know, if it's a boxing match, you know, he can box and I can box, you know. So listen, it's going to be a good show. It's going to be a good show.
Do you feel that the early rounds in this fight are going to be, really interesting?
To tell you the truth, I don't. What I'm thinking, which I'm always prepared for the either or, but what I do think is I think he's gonna try to initiate the movement and be away and initiate the jab and all this and that. You know, just by him emulating Floyd, you know, all the time. So I believe that. But I mean, if not, if he wants to come in and attack, we can go there, you know. And but I think the early rounds are going to be moderate, you know, not crazy exciting, but nothing to lull you to sleep, you know, because I'm going to go to work.
And last time we spoke, if I'm not mistaken, I know that, you know, you're 41 years of age now. I think I mentioned, you know, like, where do you kind of see your future? And if I'm not mistaken, I'm sure you said something like, you know, I'm ready to carry on for a few years yet. I've got a lot left to offer. Do you feel that this is a must-win fight for you? I don't want to start putting thoughts in your head about, you know, if you were to come up short, but if it did, you know, if things didn't go your way, would you consider hanging the gloves up?
Yeah, this is a must-win fight for me. I mean, like the Amir Mansour fight was, like the Adamic fight was, but it is a little different because I am 41, and you know, it's like, man, I've been there, done that. But I still have energy and juice to continue on with a win. With a loss, I would contemplate if I'm stopping or not even more. So, you know, like I said, I have a couple years left in my head with the win. But with a loss, yeah, it would make me sit down and say, hey, maybe we can look at, you know, retiring now. You know, if I can't, you know, and depending on the performance, you know what I mean? So, we will see, man, how things go, man. I mean, I think about that. You know, I know a lot of fighters like, I'm not thinking about that. I think about that. I try to prepare myself mentally for every scenario, you know, just like I do in a fight. Maybe he's going to come out, you know, throwing bombs. Maybe he's going to come out boxing. Maybe he's going to use speed. You know, so same thing with my with retiring or not, because of the age and just me being around so long. If I lose this one, I believe, I might have to contemplate that even harder, you know.
Yeah, we certainly hope it doesn't end up like that. The main event, I wanna get your thoughts on that. I know it can be a bit of a silly question to some people. I feel a bit silly for asking it, to be honest. But the main attraction to this whole card, Mayweather versus Conor McGregor, 49-0 versus 0-0. How do you see it playing out? Is it an easy win for Floyd?
Yeah, yes, I believe it is. I believe like the first round or two, you're going to see Floyd just doing things to see what McGregor does, and then I think Floyd needs a knockout, you know, period. He needs to knock him out. Floyd can't outbox this guy and win a decision. That will be embarrassing to Floyd, I believe. Because he's fighting a guy that's 0-0. Yes, he's top UFC MMA guy, but boxing is boxing, MMA is MMA. You know, if Floyd or me or any other fighter was to go into the MMA octagon and fight the top dude, the pound for pound, the guy that says he's the greatest of all time, and this guy doesn't get us out of there, that's a blow against them and the UFC, you know. So I think Floyd needs to stop this guy, and he needs to do it. I think he's going to do it mid-range, but I mean, if he doesn't, it doesn't look good.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you thought about, if he's going to get a knockout or not. I agree with that. I think if he was to win a decision, it's slightly embarrassing, not just for Floyd, but the whole sport of boxing. Even I'm going to feel a tad bit embarrassed to those people. Obviously, being in Britain, you know, there's a lot of Irish people here that making a lot of noise about McGregor. I'd feel pretty embarrassed about that. I want to ask you also about the World Boxing Super Series tournament. It's got all the world champions in at Cruiserweight apart from Denis Lebedev. What's your thoughts on that tournament? Are you happy it's taking place? It's, we're going to see someone take all the belts pretty much.
Yeah, I'm happy it's taking place. But I would have loved to have been part of it. We weren't contacted at all. Then we contacted, Al Heyman, who's my agent. He put the fillers out, and it's like, hey, there's no American market there. There's no American fighters. And here it is. I am at this moment the top cruiserweight in America. Two-time former world champion, still giving it a great go. But there was no hey, Cunningham, how about being in this tournament or any American cruiserweight? You got the European cruiserweights and you got, I think, the Cuban. You got 2 Cubans in there, and it's like, I mean, I am disappointed that I'm not part of it, but I just gotta, I gotta make bigger opportunities for me. So hopefully I can win. When I win this fight, I could possibly fight the winner of that. That'd be awesome.
And one of the fights that's taking place in that tournament is obviously Usyk against Huck. I know, you shared the ring with Huck and all that. In my honest opinion, I see Usyk possibly shutting Huck out. I'm not really looking forward to that fight. I think Usyk would probably toy with Huck at this point of his career. I can't see him stopping him. Do you share that opinion with me? You think it's an easy win for Usyk, or do you think Huck can, offer any kind of threat at this point?
Yeah, I think a guy like Usyk is very talented and very very skilled and awkward. He's a southpaw, and he fights. He's from the Lomachenko camp, so he has those angles in that movement, and he's big. Big and strong. So in actuality, I think he possibly could stop Huck. Because he goes for it. But again, we'll see. But Usyk is a good talent, man. Very good talent.
Yeah, absolutely. And also a mega fight happening next month. It's the fight that everybody's talking about as the real fight of the year, so to speak. Triple G versus Canelo. What's your thoughts on that one? Brilliant fight.
That's the fight right there. I want to see. I'm rooting for Canelo. I thought Triple G lost to Jacobs, but a good fight. A close fight, but I thought Jacobs took it. But it's like, they're not giving anybody anything close with Triple G. I mean, he's a star, so with the star you got to really take it to the star. But I think Canelo can do that. I think he's going to do that. I think we're going to see Triple G in a spot that we haven't seen him before, but he will weather it a bit. But I just think Canelo, his experience with fighters like Floyd and others is going to help carry him.
And the last couple questions now. The last fight I want to get your opinion on as well. Hughie Fury versus Joseph Parker. It was supposed to happen earlier in the year. It's now been rescheduled. How do you see that one playing out? Really interesting fight, I feel.
It's very interesting, man. Parker is very good. He's good. He's young. He's strong. He's got what is he, like 6'5"? He's pretty. I mean, man, he's hungry. He just got his belt. He wants to defend it as a champion. Hughie Fury. I know personally that they're in shape. Hughie's pretty crafty, big too. I can't call that one, man, because you've got a guy who just won the title, who just did what everybody wants to do and what he's trained to do for the longest, and what he's attained. What he's tried to attain and accomplish, and he did it. And now you have a guy who was him a few fights ago, and Hughie, and they've been chomping at the bit for a title shot. And I know Peter Fury, his father, works them like workhorses, So I know Hughie's going to be in shape. I can't call that one, man. I'm going to be very entertained, watching that one, because I believe it's going to be a nice barn burner.
We certainly hope so. It's a very intriguing heavyweight clash, that one, of course. And the final proper question for you now, Steve. You don't have to give it to us if you don't have one. Have you got any kind of prediction for your fight Saturday night? How do you see yourself getting that W?
Me personally, I don't really do predictions, man. Because there are things that happen in the fight that, sometimes a lot of times you gotta just switch up on the fly. Not knowing the guy to an extent, for me personally. But I mean, what I can predict is hard work and me going for the win, period, as I always do. That's what I know. And if I get him hurt, I go for it. If I can't hurt him, I go for it. I work, man. I want to set things up. I want to outdo him. I want to show him that I'm not this 41-year-old, old champion that, needs to retire. I feel great, man. I do great work in the gym. So, I'm in there. I got to show. There's a lot that I want to show, but I don't or do, and I speak with my ability in the ring.
Absolutely. Well, like I say, the most important thing, obviously, is getting the W. I'm glad to hear you talking the way you're talking. It's very encouraging for me to hear, and I'm excited for it, man. I really am excited for it. Just before we let you go, I don't think I let you do this last time, which I should have done, so I'm going to let you do it this time. Any kind of message you've got for the UK fans over here that could be listening right now? Obviously, you've got a bit of a name over here, mainly for the Fury fight, to be honest, but, a lot of people respect you over here. What's your message to those guys, Steve?
Just, man, I'm the same old Steve Cunningham, just a little more wiser and pushing. You're going to see the same thing, even a little better, a little smarter. And even if we get into some heat, we cook in that type of kitchen very well. So you guys, appreciate the support from the UK that I have. Wish I could get over there and have fought one day, or before I end up retiring, or just even visit to do a meet and greet. That would be awesome. So I will be seeing you guys one day. Hey, and I just met Johnny Nelson.
Oh, your hero. Your hero.
Yeah, man. He was, man. As a young cruiserweight, man, I was watching him defend his title. And he was up there in age also, so I told him today, like, man, I've watched you a long time, man, and was very impressed and motivated by him. So I got a chance to take a pic with him today, man, and that was awesome.
Brilliant, man, brilliant. I remember when you was on last time, I asked you who your favourite UK fighter was, and you're the only person who's ever said Johnny Nelson. So, yeah, I'm pleased for you, man.
Yeah, man, that was awesome. That was nice.
Excellent. Okay, listen, Steve, it's always a pleasure speaking with you. We're going to be behind you this weekend, of course. Best of luck for Saturday, and we're going to catch up sometime afterwards, my friend.
All right, man. Thank you again, man. Appreciate it.
Okay, and this wraps up episode 97 of the BoxHard podcast. It's been another American August episode. I've been your host, Joey Coastman. Ayaz Sumra has been Ayaz Sumra. A big thank you to our two guests on this week's show, the former two-time Cruiserweight world champion, Steve Cunningham. We wish him all the very best for his fight on Saturday on the Mayweather versus McGregor undercard. And also a big thank you to our other guest, the future youngest super-middleweight world champion in history, David Benavidez. What a fighter he's looking like at the moment. We wish him the best of luck for September the 8th. As always, the biggest thanks of all goes out to our listeners. We'll be back next week with another big show, as always. Until next time, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.